Welcome to The Nation ASEAN Plus. I'm JESSY CHAHAL. In this edition, we discuss trade, growth and integration with my guest, Professor Dr. Peter Meyer, Adjunct Professor of International Economics at University Polytech Malaysia and Osnabrück University of Applied Sciences in Germany. Welcome, Prof. It's good to have you here with us. And what a time to be discussing world economics and global dynamics of some of the shifting positions we see of how things are going around across the globe. Let's first take a look at the bigger picture. How would you describe ASEAN's current position in terms of international and regional trade compared to some of the other major blocs?
Yes. So thank you very much, and I'm honored to be here and to talk with you. When I look at historically at the development of ASEAN, I feel you are actually on quite a nice track. I looked at the contribution of ASEAN states to the GDP 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I looked at the contribution to international trade, at foreign direct investment, and so I feel ASEAN is doing quite well. When I look at similar figures for Brazil, actually this morning I did that, to look at the growth rate of GDP here in Malaysia, in Singapore, in the Philippines, and compare it with Brazil or Argentina, it's really a different world. I feel, as an economic observer, I would say you are on the right track.
Well, being on the right track, of course, as Malaysia is the chair of ASEAN as well, it's brought a lot of focus into the lens of trade and economics and investments as well. As we look at regionally what's going on, ASEAN has within itself many different levels of issues, and also looking at how countries can move forward to develop equally as well. Now, how does this diversity though help to shape regional trade integration? That was one of the main key focus areas of some of the ASEAN summits we've seen that has passed. Does it make cooperation more dynamic in all of that sort of complication, or perhaps an approach would be the discussions to help untangle those issues? Or does it then, in doing that, slow things down, Prof? Give us a way to approach this.
Yes. I like to look at diversity actually from the positive side. And especially the diversity in terms of factor endowment, that is the term we use in economics, factor endowment, the number of people working, the land available, the capital, the real capital, the machines also available. You have big differences in the different countries. Myanmar, very different, Cambodia also. And then you have Singapore, you have you in Malaysia. So there are big differences. And when we look at it from the trade side, this is a big advantage. This is actually the source of wealth, of growth, that your division of labor within ASEAN can be oriented along the lines of this factor endowment. So the more diversity, the more interesting it is actually to trade. So therefore, this negative connotation of diversity in terms of economic aspects, I think is wrong. Yes,
you've told us the good part, but perhaps you could also help to highlight what could be some of the challenges or dangers along the way in trying to navigate this.
Yes, well, there are dangers for the individual countries. If you over-specialize, if you have really a specialization on one or two products only, then you might be hit by an economic shock, external shock, and that is certainly a problem we have in some countries. But I mean, let's look at Malaysia. Together with my students at UPTM, I did that this week, and you have a perfectly diversified trade structure. Perfectly, really perfectly.
How do you mean perfect?
So perfect means in terms of export markets and in terms of export products. So export markets, you export to Singapore, you export to China, you export to the United States, you export to the Philippines. So well diversified. And then when you look at your export products, it is as well diversified. So if that is actually the policy or the result of the policy, then you are well placed to manage the shocks which happen once in a while. Is it COVID, or is it a political shock, or an economic shock, or transport delays or so? And I would say other countries are actually quite positive in that respect as well. So what is important is the diversification. And I would say especially Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, they managed quite well this diversification, which is leading to resilience.
Well, resilience is a good word here, but it can also be a double-edged sword in terms of, whether you look at it positively or negatively in terms of the external factors that may affect one. But it's good for the bloc to remain resilient. Take you back to July this year, Prof, when Malaysia's Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment, Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz, he made a statement then by saying a fragmented ASEAN will weaken us all. From your perspective, what are the biggest hurdles preventing a deeper ASEAN integration? You've highlighted some of those challenges as well, but to look at the fact that the feather in the hat is the fact of diversity. But how can we further integrate better?
Yes. When I look at European integration, let me use that comparison with Europe, the European Union, exactly. We are to some extent fragmented as well. And sometimes it has good reasons, and sometimes it has not so good reasons. Sometimes the fragmentation is because of political delays or so, lack of commitment towards European integration. Sometimes it's the lack of the capacity of governments to actually implement change. So in Europe, for example, the countries which joined the European Union 20 years ago or 15 years ago, Romania or Bulgaria or so, they just lack the political capacity to implement some changes. So that is actually sad when the fragmentation is the result of political weaknesses or so. Sometimes the fragmentation is maybe the result of ill-conceived political strategies or so. So fragmentation can be a problem, and in Europe it has been a problem sometimes. I personally feel that we should give sometimes our communities some time to develop. When I look back at the European Union's experience, I feel sometimes we overdid it. So sometimes when I look at ASEAN, I feel a bit more effort in moving on would be fine. But when I look at us in Europe, I would say we wanted too much in a very short period of time, and then we end up sometimes in bureaucratic mechanisms which are not really helpful for economic development.
So your advice would be for ASEAN to move at a less faster pace in that aspect to make sure every stone is unturned, step by step.
Yes, you summarized that nicely. Yes, I would say so. I would say ASEAN should move ahead. You still have many objectives they are ahead of you. But you should do it step by step, and you should do it in a measured way. You should see the absorptive capacity of the countries. In self-criticizing the European Union, I would say we have overestimated our own absorptive capacity for quick bureaucratic regulations concerning environment, concerning sustainability, concerning whatever. And then we actually overburdened our industry and to some extent our society.
As we speak of milestones and ways to meet those milestones, we put into view as well our objectives. And in the previous summits and currently as Malaysia being ASEAN's chair 2025, some of the areas to upgrade are basically an approach to the ASEAN trade in goods agreement, as well as the ASEAN-China free trade area and the ASEAN digital economy framework agreement. All these agreements are getting a bit of a boost and a facelift as well. From your perspective again, how transformative are these agreements to meet the competitiveness that we see within the regional bloc and in terms of long-term integration as well?
Yes. I looked at the agreements and I'm actually quite happy. I'm excited actually to see that you move you move in this direction and you use this this time of change to prepare the ground. But this is what the government can do. At the end of the day, the businesses need to pick up the ideas and move on that new basis. When I look at some of the regulations we have in Europe concerning trade or so, the nitty-gritty comes when you are really having the exports, when really the companies want to move. At the moment, for example, in Europe, we discuss about the capital market union. So we want to have integrated capital markets. And then now an Italian company, an Italian bank wants to take over a German bank, and all of a sudden we don't know whether we want it or not. But this is then the testing ground. But the government needs to produce the framework, and the framework is there. Digital services or services, they are quite complicated.
And you say there are three types of approaches to this, the ones that are ordered, delivered and intermediation. Walk us through that, Prof.
Yes. So when I look at our reality in many countries, I mean in the US, you know, there was now this new policy concerning imports from China. People order digitally from Shein or Temu or so, they buy from China. This is the digitally ordered trade. This needs to be regulated. And in the United States, there was this loophole in the import tariff regulations, and so they came all free of tariffs and somehow conquered the market. So the digitally ordered trade. And then we have the digitally the services which we receive by, for example, streaming. I can use here in the hotel, I can use Netflix. But Netflix, I mean, it's not free of charge, and so we pay for that. So do we need regulations for that? I guess we need. What kind of services of that nature do we want to have? And the third one is the digital intermediation. So, for example, when I came here, I booked my hotel. So I go on a website, booking.com in my case, and I'm one of the millions who are using that. And then the hotels work with that platform. And such platforms, they have become extremely powerful. Amazon also, they have become extremely powerful. So we need to regulate such issues. And so I'm happy to see that you have prepared the ground for dealing with such issues.
Right, and of course this is reflective in the fact that trade is an emerging key driver of growth on the back of emerging technology as well as AI, in which we see the bloc also advancing in. Now we look at moving ahead, and I have this question for you. It's a little bit out of what we have pre-discussed in that aspect, but what is your opinion? Is there a new world order when we look at the different blocs like the EU and BRICS and Asean, the GCC and the CJK? Is this telling of a new world order?
Yes, I believe so. This is what we in Europe actually we realize. I think we got used to the old one, maybe because we benefited as well from the first from the old order. But this is what we think is the reality now. And to some extent, we certainly are quite unhappy about how the United States is acting at the moment. I think this is a collective feeling in the European Union, in the European countries. So we are in a phase of fundamental change. But I want to see, in my lectures, I want to, about global governance, the global world order, I want to remind our students that we wrongly assume we are in such a unique world phase. Such phases happened again and again. After 1945, The UN was created, the WTO was created, the IMF was created, the World Bank was created, the NATO was created. So we have once in a while such phases where things are changing and where we have to adapt. And let me say, I think you in Asia, you are wonderful in adapting to new situations. You are better than the Europeans in respect to see the opportunities and to be agile in responding to it.
Well, thank you for that. Definitely an encouraging factor as Malaysia, as Chair as well, navigates that. I'm going to come back to a bit about Malaysia, but let's look at the US, as you brought it up earlier, in terms of what it has imposed to many countries around the globe. ASEAN has opted for dialogue instead of going in with a fight, for example. But what does this response reveal about ASEAN's trade philosophy, and is this approach sustainable as ASEAN grows in strength in terms of in the long run? Is it sustainable? What does it say or reflect about ASEAN's philosophy?
We did the same. In the European Union, I mean, in all countries, I guess, we discuss how should we respond to the United States. The United States is breaking the rules. And I'm actually an advocate of the old rules, of the WTO system, of the diplomatic rules and the like. And so we are faced with a completely new, disruptive kind of approach. And I personally think that it's not good for the United States. The United States will not benefit in the long run from that. But the question in the European Union and here and in other places is what to do. And so some opponents of the current policy in the European Union, they would like to see tough action, a bit like in Brazil. It was provoked in Brazil by actually this policy in the US concerning Bolsonaro's case. So some would like to see more forceful actions, but we were actually quite mild. We accepted the 15% tariff rate, so we are quite similar. I think it is a reasonable approach in this world where the United States is so powerful as it is. It is a reminder that we have to have our own power. So some people are saying, and maybe that's the same conclusion we should have here for ASEAN, some people are saying this is the wake-up call for the European Union, and maybe that's the wake-up call for ASEAN to push now for more change.
As we look forward and as you've also shared with us, the fact that blocs are coming together, and we look at this from the lens of it's helping to shape a more stable world as well. Malaysia has emphasized its intention to strengthen its cooperation with some of these external partners. You're looking at the GCC and China as well. How significant is this for Malaysia in terms of long-term trade? And I go back to a word you used earlier, resilience.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to bring that resilience in. Yes, this is what we actually learned now in this crisis. We learned it during COVID crisis as well. You need to be resilient. At the moment, this is the catchword in Germany for all institutions. The city needs to be resilient, the university needs to be resilient, the state needs to be resilient, the European Union needs to be resilient.
In this context, what does resilient mean? Does it mean have enough surplus, have more trade, have human capital? Yes. What does it mean?
Yes, but I mean, it depends on a city is resilient if a climate resilient, for example, if a period of drought or so would not ruin the water supply. A university is resilient if one study program is not doing well, other study programs are doing well. A country is resilient when the tax revenue comes from different sources, and so if one company is closing down, it is not the shock for the whole country or for the whole region, but they still have other tax income, so in your case, I think it is actually making a lot of sense, and we move in the same direction in the European Union. We want to sign agreements with Mercosur, we want to sign agreements with here in Asia, and so when I read about your approach towards signing agreements with other so signing bilateral treaties or regional organization treaties, I think this is the right response.
Looking ahead for the next few years, how can ASEAN approach with concrete measures to push trade integration, to take it to a whole new level?
A whole new level. Well, I'm more of the incremental type of change. I'm in favor of that kind of change. But by going incrementally, I believe it will come. So when I look at Malaysia's growth rate, when I look at Singaporeans' growth rates, even Philippines, when I look at the Filipino growth rate, when I compare that with other countries, you are economically, you will come out economically strong. And by increasing your growth rate, there will be more demand for import, there will be more demand for exports, and then your government, or within the leadership period of Malaysia, ASEAN, they have provided for the legal framework, for the structure people can build on. I would say you are on the right track. So you will, but incrementally, I think it will not be the big jump. I don't expect Cambodia, but I don't expect Cambodia to come out now all of a sudden as a middle-income country, but that's their aspiration.
We look at foreign investment now. That's also another area in which presents itself as a key driver of growth within the region. But it also in itself may bring some challenges or some limitations. What are the main issues for ASEAN countries in terms of managing foreign investment effectively?
Yes. I think the way we should look at foreign direct investment, the narrative which we follow, which we really have in our mindset, should be the positive one. Foreign direct investment brings employment, they bring tax revenue, they bring growth, they bring capital, they bring technology. And I have seen that in so many countries. I lived in South Korea for 4 years, and I saw how they actually exploited this, or in China as well, where they exploited this advantage of learning. Some people would work in a company for 10 years, then they move to a local company, and they take all that knowledge with them. There is nothing illegal about it, and that makes a lot of sense. And so I would look at it from that positive side.
We're looking at some of the growth that's been driven by increased investment in terms of high-value services as well, particularly in the financial and insurance sector, as well as the growing importance of digital economy and energy transition. Within ASEAN, FDI hit a record $230 billion mark in 2023, so very impressive there. Moving on to the AGTF, that is the Geo-Economic Task Force of ASEAN that was recently established. Its main aim is to monitor global trade risk and opportunities. How important, Prof, is this kind of coordination mechanism, and what challenges again could it pose for ASEAN in terms of really wanting to make it effective?
Yes. I look at it as a body which is helping really the politicians, the leading people in ASEAN or in the governments to make the right decisions. When I look at our conversations about what do we do now in international trade, I think there hasn't been any time in the last 20 years where there was more need for reflection, for advice. Things are really moving fast. I mean, Donald Trump every day, maybe this morning, maybe he posted something on Truth Social, and it changes the landscape for Malaysia or for Germany. Yeah. Also, so how to respond? So the politicians or the governments, they are really under pressure, and at the same time, things are very complex. So we need such ad hoc mechanisms to bring advice into the political sphere, to help them to see clearly. I have actually, I worked the way I worked, I met many politicians in Germany and in other countries. And I have actually quite a positive, I have a positive picture of politicians. But still, they are under enormous pressure to take decisions. And to take the right decisions, we need to provide them with the information from the academia or from other specialists, from business people. So such a task force to give them orientation, what is happening in the world.
To be more seamless in that exchange of not just data, statistics, but information and ideas of initiatives to move forward. Prof, it's been insightful and interesting speaking to you. Thank you for bringing your perspective here. Well, that is our conversation for today. If you'd like more updates on ASEAN developments, do visit the ASEAN page on bernama.com. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. This has been the Nation ASEAN Class. Thanks for being with us.